War is always cruel, but sometimes it goes beyond the battlefield. Sometimes it crosses a line so dark that it makes us question what it really means to be human. The Vietnam War was filled with tragedy, but one event stood apart from the rest. Not just because of the horror of that day, but because of how long the truth was hidden. For years, the world had no idea what really happened in a small village called My Lai. So here's the question. What happens when soldiers stop seeing the difference between enemies and innocent families? What happens when the people meant to protect end up destroying entire villages? And why did it take so many years before the truth finally came out? This is not just the story of one massacre, it's the story of the cover-up that tried to bury it, the brave voices that fought to reveal it, and the survivors who still carry the pain even today. Before we dive in, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss powerful stories like this. Stories that remind us of the cost of silence and the importance of truth. The Day of Horror, March 16, 1968. In a quiet little village in South Vietnam called My Lai, life began that morning like any other. Families were making breakfast, elders sat outside their homes, and children played in the dirt roads. No one expected that their lives were about to be torn apart. American soldiers from Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment had been told the village was full of Viet Cong fighters, the hidden enemy who often dressed like civilians. But when they arrived, they didn't find soldiers with guns. They found ordinary people. Still, the orders came. What followed was not a fight. It was a massacre. Villagers were shot at close range. Women were abused before being killed. Houses were set on fire. Whole families disappeared in moments. By the time the sun set, more than 500 innocent people, men, women, and children, were dead. This wasn't war. It was cold-blooded murder. Before we go any further, I'd love your support. I'm working hard to grow this channel and share the forgotten stories that shaped our world. If you enjoy uncovering history's hidden truths, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep making these videos. The first cover-up. After the massacre, the reports quickly moved up through the military chain, but the truth was twisted. Instead of admitting what really happened, the U.S. Army called it a success. They claimed more than 100 Viet Cong fighters had been killed in battle. But that was a lie. The victims were not soldiers. They were mostly women, children, and the elderly. The Army locked away the photos. The soldiers were ordered to stay silent. For a time, it seemed like the world would never hear the truth. My Lai was buried under paperwork, treated as just another statistic in a war already full of confusion and chaos. But silence never lasts forever. Ridenhour, the soldier who refused to stay quiet. Ronald Ridenhour was not at My Lai that day, but while serving in Vietnam, he began to hear disturbing stories from other soldiers. Stories about women, children, and elderly villagers being killed. The details were so shocking that he couldn't just ignore them. When Ridenhour returned home in 1969, he felt he had to act. He started writing letters, first to Congress, then to the Pentagon, and even to the White House. In those letters, he described what soldiers had told him: unarmed villagers shot down, women and children among the dead. At first, nobody wanted to listen. His letters were pushed aside, but slowly they began to spread, reaching more and more people. It was Ridenhour's persistence that broke the silence. Without him, the truth about My Lai might have stayed hidden forever. Seymour Hersh, the reporter who exposed the truth. The turning point came when investigative journalist Seymour Hersh decided to dig into the story. In November 1969, more than a year after the massacre, he published reports that finally revealed what had really happened in My Lai. The world was shocked. Along with his articles, photos taken by Army photographer Ron Haberle came to light. They showed bodies stacked in piles, women and children lying dead in ditches. The pictures were impossible to deny or explain away. The silence was broken. The cover-up had collapsed. My Lai was no longer just a secret buried in reports. It had become a global scandal. Hugh Thompson, Jr., the man who stood against his own. In the middle of the horror, that day in 1968, one man made a different choice. His name was Hugh Thompson, Jr., a U.S. Army helicopter pilot. As he flew over My Lai, he saw what was really happening on the ground. The killings, the chaos, the civilians in danger. Shocked and angry, Thompson landed his helicopter right between the villagers and the American soldiers. He even told his crew to be ready to point their guns at their own men if that was the only way to save innocent lives. Then he did something few would have dared. He helped evacuate survivors, flying women and children out of danger. But when he reported what he saw, the reaction wasn't thanks or praise. Instead, many in the military turned on him. Some even called him a traitor for speaking out against fellow soldiers. For years, he carried that weight, living with the pain of being misunderstood. It wasn't until 1998, 3 decades later, that Thompson and his crew finally received the Soldier's Medal for their courage. In the story of My Lai, Thompson became a symbol of conscience. He showed that even in the darkest moments, one person can stand up for what is right. William Calley, the man on trial. Once the truth about My Lai came out, the U.S. Army could no longer hide it. They needed someone to take the blame, and that person was Lieutenant William Calley, the officer leading Charlie Company that day. Calley was put on trial and charged with the murder of 22 villagers, but many people believed he was responsible for far more deaths. In 1971, after a long and emotional trial, he was found guilty. The court gave him a life sentence in prison, but what happened next shocked people even more. Calley only served about 3.5 years, and not in a prison cell, but under house arrest. After that, he was free. For many, this felt like another injustice. Hundreds of innocent people had been killed, yet only one man was punished, and even he barely served any real time. Calley's apology and death. For many years, William Calley kept a low profile. He rarely spoke about My Lai and seemed to live quietly in the shadow of his past. Then, in 2009, he finally gave a public apology. He said, "There is not a day that goes by that I do not feel remorse for what happened that day in My Lai. I am very sorry." For the victims and survivors, those words came too late, but they showed something important. That even decades later, Calley was still haunted by what happened. In 2024, William Calley passed away. His death once again brought the story of My Lai back into the spotlight, raising old questions. Who was truly responsible? Was justice ever really served? And can an apology erase the pain of so many lost lives? The Vietnamese perspective, memory, and pain. For the people who lived through My Lai, the massacre was never just something from the past. It was a wound that never healed. Children grew up without parents. Whole families were destroyed in just a few minutes. In Vietnam, the Sun My Memorial stands on the very ground where the killings happened. Inside, there are photos, burned houses, and the names of the dead written down, so they are never forgotten. Survivors sometimes come to tell their stories. Their voices shake, their eyes heavy with pain, carrying memories they wish they could erase. One woman remembered how she stayed alive by hiding under the bodies of her own family. Another shared how she saw her mother and siblings killed right before her eyes. For Vietnam, My Lai is not just one dark chapter of war. It is a lasting reminder of the suffering that foreign soldiers brought into their villages, and the cruelty that innocent people were forced to endure. The global impact. When the truth about the massacre came out, it changed the way the world looked at the Vietnam War. In the United States, many people were already tired of the fighting, but My Lai pushed that anger even further. Protests filled the streets. People asked hard questions. If this is what America is doing in Vietnam, then what is the war really for? My Lai became more than just a tragedy. It was proof that terrible crimes in war were not only done by the enemy. American soldiers had done them too. This forced the country to face a painful truth it could no longer ignore. Reflection: why My Lai still matters. The My Lai Massacre is not just a part of history, it is a powerful lesson. It shows us that ordinary soldiers, when under pressure and following orders, can do terrible things. It also shows how strong institutions can try to hide the truth. But it is also a story of courage. People like Hugh Thompson Jr. and Ridenhour remind us that one person can make a difference. Remembering My Lai is not only about honoring those who died, it is also a reminder of what war can do to people and why telling the truth is so important. When people stay silent, crimes are protected. Only when someone speaks up can justice, even if it is not perfect, begin. The massacre at My Lai was meant to stay hidden, and for a while, it almost was. But one soldier refused to stay silent, one reporter refused to give up, and one pilot stood against his own men to protect innocent lives. Because of them, the truth finally came out. War will always bring suffering, but what My Lai teaches us is that the real danger isn't only in the violence itself. The greater danger is when people choose to hide it, when silence becomes stronger than justice. So the question is, what do we do with this memory today? Do we let it fade away as just another story from the past? Or do we keep it alive as a warning, reminding us what happens when power goes unchecked and truth is buried? The story of My Lai is not just about Vietnam. It's about all of us. It's about the choices we make, the voices we listen to, and the courage it takes to stand up when everyone else stays quiet. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Together, we can keep sharing stories that matter, stories that remind us of the cost of silence and the power of truth.